So some of the considerations with establishing a good pasture management in your broadacre farm system is getting the right mixture of pasture herbs and grasses established, and tying that in with the right kind of maintenance of and management of your grazers and your application of fertilizers to boost the productivity of that system, and also how that ties in with the overall design of that system and how the different elements can help benefit each other. So just the first step is probably just to graze down or to even till the soil so that you can oversow a more diverse and beneficial range of pasture herbs and grasses. At initial point, they might not all take very successfully if the pasture has been grazed quite heavily and there's a lot of erosion and compaction of that soil and very little nutrient stored in that soil, or very little life within that soil, might all negatively impact the establishment of a lot of the more nutritious and diverse pasture plants. So that might be something that you'd need to supplement over the first few years to sow some of the more sensitive pasture herbs and grasses in there to allow them to get established in that system. So once you've grazed it down and you've done your sowing of grasses and herbs, you then want to allow those newly sown grasses and herbs to emerge and get to a certain height, and that's best done in winter. So sow them in winter, allow them to grow up in spring, and then apply your fertilizer as a broad spectrum foliar spray, and that would be best done using a variety of manures, fish, seaweed, nutrient accumulating plants like comfrey. Mix that all up, create a liquid brew from it, inoculate that with beneficial soil microbes from a nice compost, and then with that liquid you can then deliver that as you would normally do with sprays, depending on the scale of it, to your pasture system, and then just spray that on, allow the grasses and to the leaves to absorb some of those nutrients, for others to go into the soil and be absorbed by the roots, and just help provide some initial fertility for the uptake of those grasses and herbs. And then over time your ongoing management is then going to transition more to towards the movement of grazers. And what the grazers will do is convert the plant matter that's growing to a manure that can be drawn down into the soil to help benefit the soil community that's there, and therefore allow better, healthier plant growth. So the incorporation of grazers into that system is after that springtime where you've applied your fertilizer, you've allowed it to grow up to a certain height. So this is all at the establishment of the system phase. You then let the grazers come in at when the grasses and herbs are about the knee height of the cows or sheep or whatever that grazer is. And for a holistic grazing system, you want to keep them there for a short duration of time so that they don't over compact the soil or pug the soil or have a detrimental impact to the soil life that's there. And what you're trying to do is have a high intensity of stock at a particular site for a short duration of time, and then move them on quickly again. So it's often done with a mobile electric fence setup that you can connect up to a main fence line that's electrified, so that mobile electric fence line is also electrified, and you can then move that along quite easily into different areas of your pasture to move those grazers along. So by doing that, you're incorporating a system where you're converting a big growth of grasses and herbs within that pasture system to manures that are going to feed that soil biology, improve the regrowth of those pastures and the whole overall fertility of that system. And also quite beneficial for the stock. So if you're feeding the stock quite new nutrient, particularly nitrogen-rich, fresh growth all the time, it can lead to the bloat of that stock. And as the grasses and herbs get bigger, they have a better balance of carbon against nitrogen in those plants, and that will help prevent bloat within those stocks. So it's actually healthier for them, and as well as having a more diverse range of herbs and grasses in that system, they will be providing a more diverse range of beneficial nutrients and minerals to those grazers. So you've sown the system, you've you've tilled or overgrazed the system. You've then oversowed it with your seeds, incorporating mining herbs such as dandelions, nitrogen fixating herbs such as clovers, and then a diverse range of other grasses or herbs. And you're best guided by your local seed catalogues and the availability or consultation with local grazers as to what are some of the herbs and grasses that perform best in that particular region and are most beneficial to the health of the particular grazers that you have within that system. But generally speaking, you'd be aiming for a good diversity of grasses and herbs in that system, and nature's going to wean out the stronger ones from that. And over time, as that system becomes more biologically rich within the soil, there's more nutrient availability in that soil, it's going to allow a more diverse range of grasses and herbs to become established. And you might just need to supplement that over the first few years with sowing some of those more sensitive herbs and grasses, and by applying a broad spectrum spray to help establish those more sensitive plants in your system. Otherwise it's just going to get overridden by the more resilient grasses and the weeds that are going to perform best in a condition that's been over compacted and poor fertility within that pasture system, which is what you're going to commonly inherit. So you then work long term with the grazing systems to improve the health and fertility of that system with just how you're moving those stocks around. And then you may, even for the first 10 years, apply a broad spectrum spray just to help boost that system and get it well established, and also integrate with that grazing system some shelter belts or food producing belts that are going to provide a range of other beneficial functions to help stabilize and make that grazing system more productive. So some of the benefits that could do is you might base it on a nitrogen fixating plant such as an alder or a tree lucerne that can provide shelter but also provide a source of nitrogen for the soil, and that nitrogen will then flow through into that pasture system to improve the productivity of those plants as well. But also block the wind to prevent the cooling of the system from a cold wind that's going to limit the plant growth, or the drying of the system from a dry northwesterly wind, which will also limit the plant growth in that pasture system, and provide shade in summer to also help prevent it drying out and limit production as well. And as well as the benefits to the plants themselves, also providing benefits to the grazers in that system as far as shelter from the sun and the winds and the cold driving rain that is going to improve their health and well-being within that grazing system. And you may want to incorporate different productive trees with your windbreak. So you might have some big fruit trees. They may be cider apples, for example, where you don't need to be too concerned about the visual quality of that fruit or the size of that tree, depending on how you harvest it. And they can get to a big full size. You don't need to maintain them too closely. You can just allow it to be productive and full size, and then harvest your cider apples and process it into your product without being too concerned about the visual appeal of that product. But also, other nut trees. You might have some chestnuts in there, or hazelnuts, or a variety of berry trees. Just keeping in mind that your species that you do select are compatible to each other and your windbreak, but also that they're not poisonous to the stock. So if they come through and they graze on the leaves or the fruits or the nuts or whatever of these productive trees, they're not going to get poisoned or sick by that. Okay, let's have a look at some of the ideas around management of water in the broadacre farm system and how that can be beneficially incorporated into your management of your system. So there's two general techniques, the swales and the dams and the keyline design, that we'll look at. The swales and the dam is all about kind of capturing the water flow through that system in swales. So swales are ditches on contour that follow the topography of your landscape. So they they're a horizontal line. Well, they're at the same elevation, so they change with the contours of the landscape, but they're always at the same elevation. So they may snake around in different directions, but they're always at the same elevation. So if this is at 100 meters, and this is at 90 meters, and this is at 80 meters, it's going to be the same elevation at any point within that contour line. Oops, so this is going to be 90, and this is going to be 90. And what that will do is it will capture water that's flowing across that landscape and capture it in these swales, and it will direct it horizontally across that landscape, and you can collect it in the gullies of the system. So if these are the ridges and these are the gullies, a good place to build a dam is in the gullies, and the overflow from the water that's in the swales is going to be collected within that dam that's in the gully. So that will fill up with water, and that will then act as a reservoir of water that can be used for various beneficial things on the farm. So if this is a grazing system in the middle, for example, you can irrigate the grazing system just by gravity. So gravity irrigation from a pond that's further up the landscape in elevation, and that can feed into a number of different troughs that are on that site, so that as the grazers are moved through that particular grazing area, they can have access to fresh, clean drinking water from gravity feed irrigation from a pond higher up in the landscape. So that could be one benefit to having this pond storage of water being connected up to the swales. Generally also, as you get further down the landscape, you can have bigger ponds, so bigger dams and bigger ponds, and the elevation tends to become more gentle as well. So it gets higher as you get further up, and the elevation becomes steeper. But as you get further down the landscape, the elevation becomes more gentle, so less, and you can establish bigger pond systems in those situations, and you can use them for aquaponics. So you can grow plants and fish in those systems. You can irrigate main crop systems or orchard systems further lower down in the landscape where it's flatter. Or you can provide backup drinking water, or even just grey water for the house, so for flushing toilets or driving washing machines or things like that. You can use the water that's from those pond systems. And the idea of the swale and dam is it's just creating a pattern within your landscape to collect the water that's in the swales. So it collects water, and then the water that's collected in those swales will then slowly seep downhill through that system, and you can associate that with establishing tree systems in your landscape. So without those swales there, those tree systems would get quite stressed in summer months, because particularly on ridge lines they will dry out quite easily in summer, and the swales act as a way to capture and slow and spread the water that does fall on that landscape, and help with the establishment of trees on that landscape that would otherwise be too exposed to the elements and dry out too quickly and not establish well. So that they can be a good mechanism for establishing tree systems. And those tree systems can be shelter belts. They can be productive trees for an alternative productivity on that farm, or just an alternative fodder for the animals, or just providing better habitat for them and therefore improve the health of those animals. But by associating them with the swales, it's just a way of delivering more regular and consistent water to them to help establish them in that landscape. So the other one is the keyline system. So one of the drawbacks to the swales and dams is there's a lot of earthworks involved. So you've got to dig out all the swales, you've got to build up all the dam walls and dig out the dam body. So there's a lot of movement of earth, and there's a lot of, therefore, expense and time invested into setting up the system. The benefit is that's going to last a long time, but you might not. It might be on a scale that's just not feasible, or you might not want that long-term benefit from that, or can't afford it initially, and you're just looking for a quicker fix that is going to improve your productivity on the short term and maybe get you in a position where you could set up something that's going to be more long-term stable, like that system. And the keyline system is developed in Australia, and it was developed by a water engineer just trying to think about the movement of water on an agricultural landscape and how to redirect the movement of that water to increase the productivity of pasture plants and therefore the productive output from those animals in that system. And the keyline, again, if you've got a system where there's ridges and gullies, water would normally flow from the ridges down into the gullies, just following the course of gravity, and that's how water kind of sculpts that landscape, is with ridges and gullies. But with the keyline system, you're kind of working against that process a little bit and redirecting the water back onto the ridges. And by doing that, improving the grass growth on those ridges and the overall productivity of the system. And what you do for this is identify the key point first. So the key point is the area on the landscape where it changes from being convex, which is bulging outwards, to being concave, where it bulges inwards. So this is a concave curve there, and this is a convex curve up the top. And the key point is where you get a change in that curve. So it changes from being convex to concave. And that is the point where you start your keyline system, and you take all of your key lines from that point. So your first point would be from that key point, and then every 10 meters or so you'd make another key line. And what you're doing with each of these key lines is from the highest elevation point, dropping it lower in elevation as you go towards the ridges. So it redirects water that would normally be falling into the gullies back onto the ridges, because these are actually dropping in elevation. So if this point here was 32 meters high in the landscape, this point on your ridge would be 31 meters. So it's actually lower in elevation, and it's drawing the water back onto the ridges again, and it creates a pattern that would look like that. So a whole bunch of curves on your landscape that are redirecting the water from the gullies back onto the ridges, and therefore improving the grass growth on those ridges and the productivity of those systems. So it's a bit of a short-term fix. You know, these ridges will sediment over and fill up, so you'll need to redo it every couple of years to keep this mechanism working. And to do it, what they do is they have a key plough, which is a plough that creates a furrow in the landscape in this particular configuration, and it's just a bit of a quick fix to redirect the water and make that landscape more productive. So these are the two management systems that are commonly used. This one's more common in Australia because of the higher kind of intensive drought conditions that are experienced there. In New Zealand situations, if you've got good soil, organic matter in your soil, you probably wouldn't need to do either system, because the organic matter itself would store enough water in the soil that you wouldn't need to mechanically collect or store the water. But in some areas in New Zealand, like in Hawke's Bay and Canterbury area, which dry out quite a lot, the establishment of these systems can really improve the productivity and also the rehabilitation. So, to establish the tree crops on that system, to get that more diverse biodiversity going on that farm system, often you need to kind of work with the flow of water to help establish those systems, build up the soil biology before you get to a kind of place of resiliency within that farm system that can be more ongoingly productive.